qu'il passe. Moi, je pleure le peuple français. Mais quand même, il est bien pour l'Afrique. Il est un mal nécessaire pour nous. Contre l'impérialisme, c'est ça. Il faut décoloniser les mentalités. Prendre en compte toutes ces données-là. Parce que le monde nous donne tellement d'exemples à voir. Pour eux, il n'y a pas de morale. Ils peuvent vous désigner aujourd'hui terroriste, mais demain, vous êtes un héros. Par leur simple bouche. Ils décident de ce qu'ils font. Ils parlent de démocratie, mais ils se font eux-mêmes des coups d'État qu'ils passent.
Hello to you all. You're watching RHTVLive. This is the last live episode of 2025. We are streaming live from the beautiful city of Maastricht. And of course, we're going to take a look at what happened in 2025. So, what's on the radar? What is on the radar? Well, let's take a look at what happened a while back at a border dispute, Cambodia versus Laos. A border dispute that's been going on for quite a while, and it's basically solved, yet not solved, because there are some skirmishes here and there. So, is one of the highlights of 25, the border dispute between let's see if this. So that is one highlight that we can talk about, the border dispute between Cambodia and Laos. So that's been happening in 2025. Let's take a look at this here. The Guardian has been talking about it. Oh, not Laos, Thailand. Yeah, Thailand. Thailand, Cambodia, not Laos. Sorry for Laos people. So this has all been happening, right? It's sad. It really is sad to see. But the situation is solved. It's not really solved, but it's solved. And it's Laos, Cambodia agreed to withdraw troops. Was it Laos? I believe it was Laos, right? One of these countries. Anyway, it's sad to see that this has happened in the year 25, but this dispute is solved? Question mark. Who knows if there will be a new border dispute? Who knows? Who knows? We also have a very significant thing that happened in 2025, which was the war between Iran and Israel. We remember that, right? And let's take a look at these images here. Iran launches ballistic missiles at Israel in retaliatory attack.
زي تصيادة وعلى كوكي.
These are images we will not ever forget. This was one of the main things of 2025. Wars everywhere, right? We just saw Cambodia versus, I believe, Thailand or Laos, one of those two countries, you know, and many people killed. We still have a war going on in Ukraine, right? So that is still not solved. The war in Ukraine. You see, the thing is, in 2014, government took over and killed a lot of Ukrainian-speaking, Russian-speaking Ukrainians. You know, so it's that's why the East said, nope, we're not going to take part with this. And they separated from Kiev and basically said, we are autonomous states within Ukraine. They actually had a referendum, Crimea and other places within Ukraine had a referendum to join Russia, and they overwhelmingly wanted to join Russia, even though the referendum was not seen as a legal binding thing, even though Russia had said, now all these eastern parts of Ukraine are part of Russia, right? So that changes the playing field, because Ukraine sees the East as Ukraine and Russia sees the East of Ukraine as Russia. Now we have Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky talking about peace in Ukraine. We will see if that will ever, come to pass, right? There's a lot going on, people, a lot going on. So we're also going to take a look at Syria. One of the main things in Syria is that there's a new leadership, so-called leadership, which we know is not a leadership. We know that Turkey has sponsored HTS and paved the road to Damascus for them. And now HTS al-Jilani is in power, attacking the Druze, the Alawites, Christians, and the Kurds, and other Syrian minorities. So we know what's going on in Syria. There was also a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which was solved during the first term of Trump. And it's also something to take note of. And we're going to see if we can find some images of the peace deal. And we will show it to you guys. Here we have the peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which Iran rejects, right? Iran is more of a regional player than the United States. So let's take a look at this here. Oh, wait, that's not allowed, right? It's mainstream media. You're not allowed to show mainstream media. So here we have Al Jazeera. I believe they're not going to take note. So let's take a look at this here. In the meanwhile, you can hear fireworks in the background.
What's the peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia? The US brokered the deal, giving it leverage and business opportunities. But will it hold? And what will Washington's growing presence in the South Caucasus mean for the region? This is Inside Story. Hello again, I'm James Bays. There is a peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia after nearly 4 decades of conflict. The final stage was brokered by US President Donald Trump in the White House. Crucial to the deal is a corridor to connect the main part of Azerbaijan with another part of its territory, which is cut off because it's on the other side of Armenia. The deal will likely have an impact beyond the borders of the two main players. It's good news for Turkey, with potential for energy deals, but may undermine Russian and Iranian influence in the South Caucasus. But how long will it take before the corridor really becomes a reality? And can there be a lasting peace in the meantime? We'll put this to our guests in a moment. But first, this report from Imogen Kimber.
A handshake to seal the deal. Peace has been brokered at the White House between Azerbaijan and after nearly 4 decades of conflict.
Today we have reached a significant milestone in Armenia-Azerbaijani relations. We're laying a foundation to write a better story than the one we had in the past.
The long-running dispute is about the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Although a major part of this deal is a corridor through Armenia to connect Azerbaijan with an isolated part of its territory. This was a sticking point in previous negotiations. It will be called
the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, which is a special transit area that will allow Azerbaijan to get full access to its territory of Nakhchivan while fully respecting Armenia's sovereignty.
The US will be instrumental in its creation.
Armenia is also creating an exclusive partnership with the United States to develop this corridor, which could extend for up to 99 years. And then they promise in 99 years they'll extend it, right? You'll promise.
Reportedly, US companies are already expressing interest in the work. Azerbaijan will also see a major upgrade in its diplomatic and trade relations with the US. And Trump has waived the aid restriction which has been in place.
You see, that is what the US is doing. They're expanding their influence in the Caucasus, right? So we have Armenia and Azerbaijan at the foot of Russia, right? We also have Georgia, and these countries are anti-Russia, basically. Many of the people on the streets are like, nope, we don't want anything to do with Russia. There is a small place in Georgia, South Ossetia, who wants to join the Russian Federation, but the rest says, nope, we don't want that. Over here we have South Ossetia, this region here. So, but the rest says, nope, we don't want any involvement with Russia. So Armenia and Azerbaijan, they were a bit tense with each other because there's there was a settlement in Azerbaijan from Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, and now Azerbaijan has that place, that settlement, and Russia used to be the in-between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But now the focus of Russia is at Ukraine because there's still a Ukraine war going on, right? So that changes the focus of Russia and creates a vacuum where Russia does not have any influence within Armenia or Azerbaijan, right? And this is where the West, the United States, comes in and says, you guys need to make peace. So this is the strategy of the West, right? Encircle Russia. A very old strategy. We have shown a video how to stop World War III, right? And we're going to show it again. So people will have a better grasp of what's really going on, right? How to stop World War III. Let's take a look at this here.
Executive power in the country.
We have to rewind first. There we go. Hastings Ismay was the first guy, the leader of NATO when it came to be, right? When it was made, Hastings Ismay was the leader, and now we have Mark Rutte, yeah, which was the worst prime minister the Netherlands has ever had. Anyway, we know that there were Nazi members in NATO getting high positions, right? And they were being searched by the USSR, right? So we're going to take a look at this here.
Secretary General of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, once quipped that the goal of the alliance was to keep the Soviets out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. Today, the US seems here to stay, and the Germans seem weaker by the day. Has NATO achieved its goals? If so, why does it still exist? And why did Fidel Castro call it the most perfidious instrument of repression known to mankind? To answer these questions, we look back at the organization's history in Europe and beyond, and consider why a defensive alliance might end up causing World War III. NATO emerged in the wake of some of the most turbulent events in human history. The world was reeling from a global war, and the geopolitical balance of power was undergoing a tectonic transformation. The Soviet Union lost 27 million lives to defeat Nazi Germany. China lost over 20 million in a much longer war against the Japanese Empire. The British had been blitzed, their colonies starved, partitioned, and abandoned. Europe was in ruins. The United States, on the other hand, emerged economically stronger, and after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, shielded by the terrible power of the atom. It moved quickly to apply its newfound power to a project of global hegemony. Preponderant power must be the object of US policy, a State Department memo said in 1947. NATO was a critical piece of that puzzle. Founded in 1949 with the explicit mission of deterring Soviet expansionism and establishing a permanent North American presence on the continent. But NATO was not the only US military treaty signed after World War II, and the other treaties reveal a lot about the real motivation behind NATO's creation. These included the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, or SEATO, and the Central Treaty Organization, or CENTO. Each was part of a grand strategy of economic and military encirclement and containment of communism. NATO insists that it's a force for democracy, but from its inception, it has armed, protected, and elevated some of the most reactionary forces in European society. In fact, the ashes of World War II had not yet settled in Europe, and the US was already busy rehabilitating fascists all around the continent. Antonio Salazar's brutal Estado Novo regime in Portugal was a founding member of NATO and remained a core member until it was toppled in 1974. Adolf Heusinger, a senior Nazi officer and close ally of Hitler wanted by the Soviet Union for war crimes, would become chairman of its military committee. Not many people remember the violence that swept across Europe in these years. Through initiatives like Operation Gladio, the United States funded what it called stay-behind operations across the continent, cultivating a clandestine paramilitary network ready to strike at and disable the rising popular movements sweeping Europe.
So basically, they're using stay-behind networks to attack European countries and say, well, look what the communists did. You guys need protection. No, you bombed us. And basically was a false flag, right? You know? So this has happened in Europe. And this is why there's an anti-Russian sentiment in Europe. Many people still believe that the Russians attacked Milan and Rome and other places in Europe, whilst it was the stay-behind networks who really did it.
From 1948 onwards, the CIA funneled tens of millions of dollars to extremist right-wing groups in Italy alone. These groups were responsible for scores of deadly terrorist attacks that massacred hundreds, many of which were blamed on the left. These, according to a 2000 parliamentary commission in Italy, were part of a strategy of tension that terrorized people into abandoning their loyalties to the rising communist and socialist movements, intended in particular to stop the Italian Communist Party, and to a certain degree also the Italian Socialist Party, from reaching executive power in the country. US activities extended far beyond Italy. The Corsican gang that led the French Connection, a notorious drug smuggling scheme that delivered most of the US's heroin, also received CIA support to prevent the rise of communist forces in France, as did Turkey's brutal Grey Wolves, and Portugal's Central Order and Tradition, and Greece's military junta. The list goes on. NATO's mandate derived explicitly from the threat posed by the Soviet Union, and the rising popularity of communism outside of the USSR fell within its purview.
Well, the Soviet Union is dissolved, right? There is no Soviet Union anymore, so there is no real enemy. Why do we still keep having NATO then? Now, who is going to attack us? You tell me.
As an instrument of US hegemony, NATO could not withstand the rise of an anti-imperialist politics within its domain. And the case of Italy reveals the indivisibility of NATO's process and the broader aims of US empire. NATO insists that it's a guarantor of freedom, but we don't have to look far back to find its fingerprints in attempts to crush popular aspirations for sovereignty. Fighting for liberation from Portuguese colonialism, the Bissau-Guinean revolutionary Amilcar Cabral described the weapons that flowed into Africa through the alliance, supporting the Salazar regime's wars against the people of Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and Cabo Verde. NATO is the USA. We have captured in our country many US weapons. NATO is the Federal Republic of Germany. We have a lot of Mauser rifles taken from Portuguese soldiers.
Can you guys understand this? So we have NATO operations outside of Europe, right? Outside of Europe, in Africa and elsewhere, right? Oh, that was a big one. So it's not a defensive organization, right? You know, people need to understand that NATO is expanding. It's expanding their influence. They're going towards the east. Sweden and Finland used to be neutral countries. Now, recently, they've joined the NATO alliance, right? Which encircles Russia. We also have Latvia and all these countries, the Baltic states, you know. So they all joined NATO, and the only friend Russia really has is Belarus, where we have Lukashenko, who's been in power since the early 90s, right? He is known as the last dictator in Europe. So, yeah. We have two opposing powers. We have the EU and the Russian Federation, and the EU is expanding, and the Russian Federation is just laying back and doing nothing, basically, until they cross the line with Ukraine. Right? We know you fractured country wants to join Europe, the East wants to join Russia. Now, as I've said before, they had a referendum, and now the east of Ukraine is seen by Russia as Russian soil, right? So this is why it's very hard to make a peace plan. You have to change the Russian law first, and this and that. You know, so it's I don't think Putin will give that back to Ukraine. So it's very, very interesting to see what's happening. If we had Kamala Harris as a president, we'd be in World War III. You know, nuclear war. We are in World War III. There are many wars going on, right? So if we take a look back at 2025, we see that the war in Sudan is still raging, right? We have the SAF and the RSF, Rapid Special Forces, against the Sudanese armed forces, right? And it's, you know, it's sad. It really is sad to see that there are so many people dying in Darfur and other places in Sudan, right? We want peace. We want these people to live in peace. You know, many Sudanese are now fleeing towards Europe, whilst Europe doesn't have the capacity anymore to take any more refugees, right? So, very interesting to see what's happening in Sudan. And we also saw something very hypocritical at the end of this year, like 2 days ago. We had Israel saying, Somaliland, we recognize you as a country. Wait a minute. You have next door neighbors, the Palestinians, who you don't give a state, right? No state for the Palestinians, but you do give a state to Somaliland. Explain that to me, right? Explain that to me. Well, I know why. I know why Israel wants Somaliland. Because they have no access to the Red Sea. The Houthis in Sana'a are, still in power, and the Israelis to do anything about it. So this is why they want Somaliland. We even have the president of Somalia saying what Israel really wants, right, with Somaliland. So we're going to show that in a bit. Here we go.
التوطين الفلسطينيين
Wait, go back. There we go.
التي بحوزتنا تظهر أن هناك 3 خطوات مهمة تم الاتفاق عليها مع أرض الصومال. الأولى هو إعادة توطين الفلسطينيين في أرض الصومال. ثانيا توفير قاعدة عسكرية لإسرائيل في خليج عدن، في ساحل خليج عدن. والخطوة الثالثة أن تنضم أرض الصومال إلى اتفاقات أبراهام. هذه هي المطالب الإسرائيلية الثلاثة التي قبلت بها أرض الصومال. هذه كما تفيد معلوماتنا إذا ليس واحدة أو إذا هي الثلاثة، وإذا تم تطبيق هذه الثلاثة ماذا سيحدث مستقبلا؟ سينفتح صندوق الشرور في العالم.
You see, the Houthis have said there will be no U.S. or Israeli ships in the Red Sea, right? This is why Trump had made a peace deal with the Houthis. And the Houthis, they didn't really, and you know, do their bit in the bargain, right? They did attack U.S. ships and stuff like that, even though there was a peace deal, you know. So, yeah, it's unstable, the American government against the Houthis, you know. And the Houthis are basically saying, hey, this is our property, right? You have no say in our land. You have nothing to say here. So, yeah. That was also brokered, the peace deal with the American government and the Houthis this year. And it's very interesting to see what's going on. You know, because we know that Ethiopia wants a harbor. They already were doing a deal with Somaliland, right? This is the part of Somaliland here. Basically, Somalia is a country too. You have an English colony, which is Somaliland, and you have an Italian colony, which is basically Somalia, right? So split into two, and Somaliland wants independence from Somalia, and now we have Israel saying, yeah, you're a country, yeah, and can we move all these Palestinians towards Somaliland? Can we do that? Yeah. Can we set up a base in Somaliland so we can fight off the Houthis? Can we do that? There's also an island here, which is in the hands of the United States, right? And they're using jet fighters and such to fly over Yemen, to bomb Yemen, and land here on the island. And Yemen says, hey, wait a minute, that island over there, that's ours. Yeah, we don't like your Pax Americana policy here, you know. So that's going to be very interesting to see in the next year what will happen with Somaliland. Will Ethiopia get a harbor? And will Israel settle Palestinians in Somaliland and stuff like that? So that's also very, very interesting to see, right? What else do we have on our geopolitical plate? Well, we have Venezuela. Venezuela, Maduro, it's his last chance, basically, as a president. You know, we have the United States fleet basically bordering off Venezuela, such as it did with Cuba, right? In the 60s. Now they're doing the same to Venezuela. And of course, it's all about the oil. It's not about freedom, right? It's not about freedom. It's not even about the president. It's about the minerals, the oil that Venezuela has, right? That's what it's all about. Let's see if we can find some video there. So we need to stop NATO right? That is our task. That is what we need to do. We need to stop NATO. And there's so much going on. Venezuela. The news. There we go. So we have warships at the coast of Venezuela. And yeah, we're not allowed to show these images. PBS, that is not allowed, right? We're not allowed to do that. Nope. You get a warning from YouTube. So we have an oil tanker basically evading the U.S. line in front of Venezuela. And yeah, very interesting to see these tensions going on. Who knows what will happen? Who knows if the peace president, the so-called peace president, will invade Venezuela or not? We shall see next year, or maybe not. Hopefully not, because we don't want war. We want peace. That is what we want. We want the Venezuelan people to thrive, right? We don't want some tin pot dictator to say, I am the president, you can't evict me, I'm the president. Yeah, right. You're not president. You were chosen to be president, Mr. Maduro. You were chosen to be president by Hugo Chavez, who died of cancer. And your socialist little country there is not going to hold. We saw the same happening in Argentina. Remember that? Argentina? Now, Argentina was a country that was very, very, corrupt and basically broke. And Milei had said, we're going to get rid of all this bureaucracy, right? We remember the chainsaw, that Milei had. And basically, Argentina is doing good economically. The only country within South America that's doing good, right? You also have Paraguay and Uruguay that are also not really, broke, but they have a small government and not much news comes from there. So, this is all happening. And yeah, we basically have a blockade in the coast of Venezuela. And yeah, we'll see what's going to happen there, right? Let's hope that Donald Trump comes to his senses and says, nope, we're not going to attack you, Maduro. We got you there. You were shitting your pants. Yeah, but we're not going to attack you. Let's hope that will be the solution that Trump has, right? Because if there is a war in the north of South America, right, Venezuela, Colombia had said, if you attack Venezuela, we will protect Venezuela, right? So this is all happening. I'm not making anything up. This is just the frame of reality that we're living in, not the frame of consensus, right? We don't believe in that. We believe in the frame of reality. And the reality on the ground is that Thailand, or not Thailand, Taiwan, or Taipei, is being encircled by China, right? They're doing drills. They've been doing drills for the last 2 years now. and they're still getting closer to Taiwan. And who knows when they will attack Taiwan. And if they will, it'll be under an operation that they're doing right now, you know? So Myanmar is still having a coup, right? We have the people in Myanmar fighting against the coup government, and still that war is going on, even though, you know, not many people talk about it. We still look at the situation on the ground as far as we can over here in the Netherlands. So Pakistan and India also had a conflict, border conflict, right? Or wait, was it Pakistan and Afghanistan? One of those two. We did do this like in the beginning of the year, somewhere in the beginning of the year. We talked about the Pakistan crisis, right? In Afghanistan, you have the Taliban. And the Taliban, the ideologues of the Taliban spilled over to Pakistan. And now you have the Pakistani Taliban, which the army is attacking, right? Yeah, so that's been going on. There's so much going on. What else? We had the elections in Romania. You guys remember Calin Georgescu? Yeah. But no, Calin Georgescu was not allowed to, man, all these fireworks, huh? Calin Georgescu was not allowed to be in the politics in the elections because he had so-called Russian connections. Yeah, we heard that one before, right? Donald Trump was put in power by Putin. Yeah. Nope. Did not happen. Okay? Did not happen. Calin Georgescu does not have any Russian ties, and he would have won the elections, which is very, very, serious, because Romania has like the biggest NATO base. It used to be Poland, Warsaw, but now it's Romania that has the biggest base. And why would that be? Why would NATO put a base in Romania? Hey, wait a minute. What do we see here? We see the Black Sea. Yeah. And if we look at the Black Sea, we see Crimea. Yeah. And Crimea is now part of Russia. And there is a war against Russia. Russia has access to the Black Sea. Basically, almost everything of the Black Sea they have in hands, right? But now you have NATO with fleets and stuff, gathering at Romania, Turkey is also a NATO country, so they can provide all these ships and stuff into the Black Sea. So they're trying to attack Crimea. We also saw a very interesting thing with Hungary and Slovakia. You see, they are dependent on Russian gas. Now, Ukraine, in the beginning of this year, in 2025, they basically sabotaged a pipeline going to Hungary that came from Russia, basically Belarus. You had this pipeline here that had connection to Hungary, right? Well, that pipeline is gone. And now Orban, the leader of Hungary, said to Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, you guys have the Turk Stream. Yeah. There's a pipeline in the Black Sea that connects Russia to Turkey called the Turk Stream. Right? And this is also very important because of Romania. Now we have NATO in the Black Sea. And who knows, maybe the Turk Stream pipeline will be sabotaged, such as they did with the Baltic, the Nord Stream pipeline. This is all happening, and we are heading closer to a new year. Now let's hope that the new year will give us, good stuff. No more wars. Yeah. I don't want any more wars. I don't pay my politicians to fight Russia behind their desk. Yeah. I don't want war. We need peace. That is what we need. That is what we want. Now, maybe a bit weird with all these fireworks, but still, we want peace. We want peace. That is what we want. We don't want NGOs going into countries and destabilizing countries. We don't want that. Leave the Ukrainians alone, right? That also goes for Russia. Leave the Ukrainians alone. Even though they're brothers, leave each other alone. Leave each other be. Now, Ukraine, I don't want Ukraine to join NATO because this is all why there is a war in Ukraine. Because they wanted to join NATO. You see, in 2014, you had a president, Yanukovych, who had two contracts on table. Either join the EU, which is the West, or join the Russian Federation, the East. And Yanukovych said, I choose the Russian Federation, which gave green light to overthrow Yanukovych and put radicals in power that were attacking Russian-speaking Ukrainians, right? So, we're almost at the new year, and let's just hope that there will be positive news, right? Positive, something positive in our beautiful planet. Because when I look around, and I look at before, for example, Haiti, right? These people have nothing. Nothing. They're eating dirt, basically, and they're fighting off external powers that are trying to decide the future of Haiti. Now, let's take a look at what's happening in Haiti. Let's hope that there is some positive news coming from Haiti. Let's see. Haiti news. Why I'm building in Haiti. Now, that's interesting. From USA to building his first house in his first Airbnb in Haiti. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. 5 days ago. Interesting. We haven't looked at Haiti for quite a while. So Haiti's gangs take over. This was 3 weeks ago. Let's take a look at this guy here, who's made an Airbnb in Haiti.
Welcome in the house, land. Right here is actually building by young Haitian diaspora. On commence me dit même quand on était déjà aux Andes, quand on était déjà, on dit bon commencer, on commence à acheter ciment, roche, mettre là même pas pour comme vous non, aux Andes, mais chaque même travail, moi Andes, chaque même travail il doit avoir pas 1000 à 2000, sinon pas 500. De temps en temps, bon, tu vois, de temps en temps, il va pour tout le monde qui compris.
Oh, so there's an Airbnb that has nothing in it. Yeah, that's it. Now let's see if there's some other news of Haiti. Because we haven't followed Haiti for quite a while. You know, new Kenyan police contingent arrives in Haiti in combat gang violence 3 weeks ago. So I assume that there is still violence going on in Haiti. I was trying to look at on YouTube for someone on this freaking planet who can give geopolitics. And no one can give geopolitics, right? No one cares. No one cares about Haiti. No one cares about these people. No one cares about the people in Gaza. No one cares. No one cares about the people in Sudan, even though there's a war going on over there for more than 3 years. No one cares. No one cares. And this is why we had a big break. RHTVLive had a big break because, you know, no one basically cares. And doing this live stream right now, you know, I don't know if people care. I don't know. Just giving my opinion here, you know. You may say, oh, that refugee over there, you need to go back home. No, wait a minute. There's war going on in Haiti, war going on in Sudan, war going on there, war going on there. You know, these people cannot go back. Would you go back to a country where you may get shot because you're part of a minority? No? Of course not. Of course not. These people who have power do not care. They do not care. They only care for their own power. That's what they care about. So we were busy on X talking about a revolution. Yeah. And these are some wise words from RHTVLive. Revolution is not about equality, it's about power. The iniquity of power makes someone invincible in their mind's eye. This is why power is sought, bribed, or bought, without thinking of the consequences. The power still remains after the person seeking power is long gone. Revolutionaries hide behind the inequity in society and call for reforms, yet when they themselves are in power, They use the ideals of the revolution against the population to stay in power themselves, often to their own destruction, such as the soft-spoken lawyer. We know our history. We know Robespierre. We know. You don't want a revolution to be a revolving door. Understanding power is necessary. Where does it come from? Who else but the people grants a certain person power? This statement is speculative, since external powers granted me a king, who I never chose. William, who shouted, "I am king," after a major defeat of a French general, declaring himself to be the revolution, has a lineage that lines up to the recent power that's family, a dictatorial rule, without dictation, since the king's parliament decides. And there you go. Stuff to think of, right? To understand how a king can rule over a population, yet still call it a democracy, you have to take a look back in history. The Greeks have fought with two systems, one called democracy and one was a monarchy. The two clashed and eventually creating a state under a king. There you go. There you have compact history with a few lines. You know, anyone can understand this, right? The people in power are never satisfied. There's always a war to fight on home turf or elsewhere. The inequity of society provides criminality that needs to be stopped by the people who work for government. The cyclical nature provides for expansion of power. Yeah, there you go. In a utopian society where revolutionary ideals are fulfilled, people will also rebel against that, wanting change, even though the change they thrived for is already there. The human spirit wants to evolve, wanting to know more, not looking at present structures. Yeah, there you go. You can criticize the power structure now, but 100 years ago, we had another form of power structure that was, worse, because we didn't have the technology. We didn't have the means, to go forward back then. We were still inventing stuff. So, revolution is a constant change to strive for better. Beware of the people wanting power under a vacuum of change. People create things beyond their knowledge and have the confidence that people will thrive on what they built. Often the opposite is true. The path of good intentions is walked upon by bad people. People who want power often want to suppress others. Seldom you see people in power lifting people out of the iniquity of society. Yet those in the underbelly of society are dependent on those who have power over them. Voting in a new party won't change the underlying problems. The underlying problems are there not to be solved, but to function as a discontent on society. Society can only work if all are fully functioning in society, which is not how the world works. There you go. 10 points of thought on revolution and society and power. There you go. I don't see many people posting this on X, things to think of, right? So, I think I've said enough for now. I wish you all a nice new year. Let's take a look at some comments here. I had a question, is the flag on the right corner a French flag? No, it's a Dutch flag. Yeah, Dutch. It's a Dutch flag. You see, the Dutch were there long time ago. Americans are proud of their country. Oh, we are the best country. We were a republic. The Netherlands was a republic long before America was. You even had the second president of the United States, which wasn't a president back then. But anyway, John Adams going to Amsterdam, wanting to loan money for their revolution. You know? So the Dutch are superior, even though we're bad in wars. Very bad in wars. 4 wars we lost against the English. So, yeah. Have I said enough, or need I say more? I want a better world. I want the people of this planet to be free from the chains that, bind them. You are a free human being. You can decide which path you want to walk on. There's no government or whatever else that can change ideas. No bolt can stop an idea whose time has come. Right? The French Revolution was all about ideas. But as I've said before, look out for the people wanting power in a vacuum of change. Right? We have to beware of the power that our government has over us. Even though they work for us, they can also jail us. Right? So I hope that in the new year, we will have a better year. A better year, better movies. Have you seen the movies of 2025? Most of the movies suck. Really, Hollywood is falling apart. I'm not making this up. There are like actors and stuff like that saying Hollywood is falling apart. It's up to us to make it better. Right? It's up to us. We have a whole new year to start the year off, and we want better. We don't want war. We want peace. That is what we want. That is what we want. That is what we need. We need peace. Right? We don't need Ukrainians killing Russians. What we need is maybe a competitive thing, such as, a soccer game, maybe, right? And some Russians and Ukrainians playing soccer. That is what we need. Right? That is what we need. Here we go. This is in the Donbass. Even though there's fighting going on, you also have Ukrainian captives by the Russian army, and they're playing soccer. This is what we need. We're going to show this and then close off. I wish you all the best for the new year. We will be back in the new year, and we will talk geopolitics, of course. And we'll do it more frequently than we did this year, right?
Всем привет еще раз. После боевых, перед новогодних и наших выездов, в том числе вместе с дикой дивизией Донбасса, попали как раз перед Новым годом на крутейшее мероприятие. Сегодня здесь товарищеский матч, который организовал основатель пятнашки, легендарный командир Абхаз, мой друг Охранец, братик, здорово еще раз. Я смотрю, здесь ребята в форме ВСУ и ребята в форме донбасской. Кто, откуда и как так получилось?
Ну, это сборная ВСУ против сборной пятнашки, играют в Донецке.
Ну, то есть это ребята пленные, да, которые были у вас?
Да, это военнопленные, которые до сих пор у нас были.
Ну, я так понимаю, они ждут прямо обмена. Вот тоже.
Но мы идем принципом, что историю надо помнить и чтить, и мы помним в истории, когда в Киеве сыграли матч смерти, поэтому мы хотим, что тот период для нашей страны был неправильный, фашизм — это не наша история, поэтому мы покажем матч мира, матч жизни. Поэтому ребята, которые сегодня здесь играют, это все, которые выжили, которых мы реабилитировали, касаемо здоровья, не их поведения, поэтому они до сих пор военнопленные. И вот сейчас играем матч, а потом они пойдут на обмен.
That is what we need, right? We need, if you want to be combative, why not play soccer? Huh? Why not go into a boxing ring? I want to see Putin box with Mark Rutte. Huh? Let's see Putin kick his butt. Anyway, we'll see each other next year. I thank you all for watching and sharing. And as you can see, it does not include paid promotions. We don't get money for this. We're doing this all for free. So I'll see you guys next year. Have a good one.